So our next presentation that we're going to have is actually a roundtable conducted by Jim Vogel. And Jim Vogel is the founder and president of the Bioprocess Institute located in Rhode Island as part of the University of Rhode Island. And with Jim, Mike Johnson, who's a business development manager at Integris, are going to talk more about the standards that have been put in place, what BPSA, what ISCE, what some of the other organizations are doing to help standardize some of the products, some of the materials, and some of the equipment going into single use to make your lives a little bit more easier. So, as we're getting this set up, I'll introduce Jim in a second. Thank you very much for waiting. Again, Jim Vogel. If I'll have Mike Johnson, and also being joined by Jeff Carter from GE Healthcare. We'll get into the single-use standardization. Jim will provide you an update, and with Jeff and Mike, we'll talk about some of the latest developments on standardization. Jim.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here. This is going to be interactive, so if things come up during the presentation, feel free to raise your hand. And okay. And most of us here on the panel here, Jeff and Mike, are members of multiple groups, as we affectionately call the alphabet soup, with things with single use. And this is really just a general overview to kind of get you to see what's going on. And we're really looking for your input and what are you interested in and what can help the industry go forward. And like Brian said, to build upon the previous presentations today. So, you know, what do you guys think, and what does the industry think as where we should be in regards specifically to standards and guidelines? What will help us with single use in this area? There's a lot of talk, there's a lot of surveys that have been going on about this, and really, what are you looking for? Where should we be in 2026, or even, 2021, 5 years from now, or even next year? Where is that, and what do you need to get your job done? We're looking for that input, and the standards organizations have lots of folks that have been working on that. So we're just going to give a brief introduction kind of to the state of affairs, some things about the standards, and some activities that the groups are doing to hopefully shed some light for you as to where you can get some information, but more importantly, I think where you can get involved. And that's really why we're here, is to get you involved and help us with this. So Eric Langer did a great presentation this morning talking about single use and the impact, and there are a lot of big numbers here. So pharmaceuticals, biopharm, we're talking $200 billion potential. 80% in early clinical trials are single use items, and the market is growing rapidly. Depending on where you look at it and so on, quite large amounts of money in the billions of dollars. In the BioPlan report last year, 50% of the people said that they're considering using single use. So that's a big thing. So everybody's using it. Eric talked to that this morning. It is here. So in our view, it's really part of the fabric that we have here. In addition, standards have an opportunity and really have a role to help the industry. There's an effort going on in this country called Standards Boost Business, which is really about trying to emphasize consensus-based standards. Standards can, as Doug Newgold said, the former head of ATMI, can help reduce qualification and validation costs. He's seen that in semiconductor, can help focus efforts in the highest value areas, can provide development and enable growth. And in his words, he said, set the standards before the regulatory environment would set it for you. And I see that opportunity here, and that's some things that the standards groups have been trying to head off some of these things. We're successful most of the time, but obviously when the regulators weigh in, we have to listen. So when you look at these, what we call voluntary consensus standards, there are some regulations where they are referenced and where they are encouraged, where the governments have looked at that. In Europe, there's a few that we have listed here that talk about how these consensus standards, there it's mostly the ISO standards, but there are others that are referenced in the regulations there. In this country, there are two acts that are well established in our government that encourage federal agencies to use standards that are developed by recognized standards bodies. So these are actual things that encourage regulators to consider these. And that's really where we see the value of these efforts to bring this forward and to use. I know I personally have referenced things like the ASME BPE in regulatory inspections. And that is a recognized ANSI document that was able to be referenced in our inspection with the FDA. So, as I said, single use are really part of the toolbox now. It's not really that novel thing anymore. It's really part of the industry and accepted. So how do we help them get in there with more of the standards and some of the efforts that are going on? So these are the groups that we've been talking together, and we've been trying to foster a collaborative environment between all of these groups. So these are what we call the alphabet soup. We're always looking for more, so if you're representatives of others and would like to get involved, we'd be very happy to have you join in and talk with us. We talk with others, but not on a formal basis. These groups actually, we have a formal discussion once a month. So we started to get together at a town hall with Bioprocess International in Boston in 2013. And we've had about 10 of these so far, where we get people together to, again, share the ideas, but also share with you, the audience, as to where things are going. Out of that has come some open newsletters to the public, also some very important collaborations like BPSA and BPOG on some things like user requirements and change notification. And they really came from the group starting to talk together more and more on a regular basis and bringing their power, really, of their members together to find concerted solutions for the industry. So the single-use newsletter is something that you can get online. It's free. It's just basically something to give you an update. We publish it approximately every 2 or 3 months, and it gives you an idea of what's going on with the meetings. And now we'll get into some of the details that'll be in the next edition. Levels of standardization, this is just something just to kind of give a graphic that we've given at this to show how they get more rigid as we go up in here. It's pretty clear the community, BPSA and BPOG, help us with single use and really understand where some of the issues are. Organizations like PDA, who have many presentations on the other side of the facility, ISPE and SUTAP, have done a good job of kind of bringing that to the next level, of really seeing, boiling down, what are those issues, how do we get on top of that? And then the consensus standards, ASME, BPE, ASTM have done a good job of bringing that now to actually utilizing the consensus basis. Some of this does work its way into the compendia. There are some collaborations like extractables with what's going on in USP on 661, and we see some things there. And then, like we said, regulators are encouraged to use that. This is not an art chart for you, but it gives you an idea of all the work groups that you can see shaded here that are active right now in these organizations on these topics. So there's quite a lot of work going on. If you look across the top, and we'll get to there next, is extractables. Every group's involved with that. It's the hot topic, right? You can't go anywhere without talking about extractables. Some of the other ones only have 1 or 2 groups working on it, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So on extractables, like I said, all of the groups have been involved with some efforts there. BPE is coming out with an updated mentioning of the extractables in their edition that's coming out this year in 2016. The ASTM meetings just finished in the UK, where they're working on standards to try to really harmonize some of the methods between certain areas of types of components. So those are the major efforts that are going on. SUTAP is supporting that ASTM effort, and USP is working on 661.3. So there's a lot of effort going on here, and the groups need your input as to what's going on there and what are the right measures there. And there's a lot of people around the floor here today that could talk to this. Leachables is a little less active and mostly end user based. BPOG has been taking the lead on that, but these other organizations have been also working on leachable standards and trying to come up with consolidation of methods to do on leachables. Particulate is something of keen interest from the standpoint of looking at how we adapt methods to look at the final container, but also in process. At the ASTM meetings last week, there was lengthy discussions about this. And so one team that's forming right now within ASTM is actually the methods to get the sample from the single-use device. That's been a real hard thing to think about, how you get particulate out of a bag or how you get it out of tubing, let alone how you would analyze that sample and measure the amount of particles in there. Just the use of the single-use device may generate some particles. How do we characterize that and what to do? We all know we don't want particles, or we want the least amount to be there. How we do that has been lengthy discussions, and testing have been starting to try to figure out how we can set a standard for that. It's not just saying USP 788 is the standard. It's how do you get and test that repeatedly to go into there. System integrity, things about bag integrity, fitting integrity, and so on. I've been involved with hygienic clamp fittings for most of my career. If a gasket works alone, that's been issues. Now we get with these soft bags and things that actually expand. How do we verify their integrity? A simple pressure hold isn't as easy to do. So SUTAP has been working on some methods for that right now to really get on top of this. There's a group within BPSA also working on this to really try to address how to look at system integrity on these single-use devices. Connectors, there's been some activity within ASME and BPOG and PDA on this. It's a little, I think, behind where other things are, but I see this fast moving up ahead very soon. Supply chain activities. This is probably one of the most important things for the industry, because the paradigm is really shifted from the end users being in control of the preparation of the pharmaceutical equipment. Historically, with stainless steel, as we all know, they sterilize and clean the equipment and are responsible for the validation. Now many more vendors are getting involved with that. How is that communication going on with that? Jeff and I are part of a team within BPSA and BPOG that are looking at change notification. Even just that notification that a change happened is important. And who gets that notification? And when you talk about down the supply chain, if a resin changes, it could be multiple suppliers that ultimately are going to the end user. How do they deal with that information effectively and manage that change control? It's a significant business impact here. And what we've seen is the groups are very much interested in how to harmonize these methods and really help us save some time here. Design verification, ASTM is taking the next step forward with the ASTM E2500, and there's a standard that is very close to approval that'll be looking at qualification and verification of single-use assemblies. That's employing many of the core principles that are in E2500, as well as the ISPE ICQ guide. So this is taking, again, for single use, how you can do that with your URS and qualify them to come into the end user company. Biocompatibility studies, ASTM and SUTAP are working on that to really take us to the next level from class 6 and combining that with ISO 10993. How do we marry that together and get really what we're trying to do is to assess the risk of toxicity in these devices, and when we have an assembly, multiple devices providing impact to that. So that's just a brief overview of what we're doing, and now we'd like to hear from you and at least open up the floor for discussion of what are the items that you're concerned with? What are the things that you really see for single use in the next 10 years as far as how to address this? Before that, I'm going to open it up to the panel if you have any other comments you'd like to just give in general on where we are today. Okay, so are there any questions from you or things that you're kind of concerned or would like to see from these groups? Because we bring this back in our monthly phone call with the other groups there to go there to, as Jeff said, deal with some of that friction that's in our everyday jobs. I could talk to the change stuff going on right now. Jeff and I were talking this morning. We're meeting later this week with the BPOG, BPSA group, and just getting the same change notification form we feel would take us a long way. So that way everyone will fill out a similar form that when it hits the end users, they'll look the same and the same information fields would be in there. So that's a simple thing that right now, what we heard loud and clear from the end users is you get a red one from someone, a green one from another one. The form has a field at the top left and it's on the bottom right on the other one. And just the time to understand the information in it is enough that just the format would save them a significant amount of time. Numbers of changes that people see in the end users are in the hundreds that they see. Do they get to the right place? What we had lengthy discussions about. The suppliers are always conservative and they'll say, well, I'm going to send it to as many people as I can because I want to make sure the right person gets it. So another concept we have is, could there be a single email mailbox, similar to what happens with accounts payable? Pretty much right now, most companies have accounts payable at company.com. Why not have change at company.com to get these things to come in? So these are the types of things we're talking about, those friction points, as Jeff said, to see how we can get on top of some of that. Do you have any friction points? Yeah, Ernie. Well, why don't we let these groups talk about how they do it within their groups, and then really this phone call helps to organize it every month when we see that. But these sessions are really the ones that we go back with. Here's what we heard at Interphex. Here's what we heard at Bio from people to go there. But why don't you guys talk about how the prioritization happens in your groups? No, I agree with Jeff. I think we've done a good job. I think, could it be better? That's where we really need your help. So I have some samples of these here. So the BPE is quite rigorous, hence why it's at the top of this diagram as to how to get something in here. And there are specific rules in voting, and it's every 2 years that it comes in. So it's not that flexible, let's say, to get things through here, and there's a fairly lengthy process to do that. As opposed, BPSA has some papers that have come out rather fast and really given some help to the industry to get going. And now BPE is using some of the information in these papers to bring into the standard. And that's really how this should go and really has gone. Single use, though, as we all know, has happened very fast. And so just like everything else in this industry, it's going at a pace much faster than some of this can catch up. That's why we need you involved. That's really why we need that. Any other questions or comments related to the efforts? So I think, as we've said here, I think Ernie did a great job of kind of bringing this up, and the panel here has talked about it. Alignment is needed, and there's dialogues with the regulators, there's dialogue with everyone, but the current and future drugs need it, the patients need it, but volunteers are needed to really bring this through. So as we said, this is really a call for you to look at how you can add to your day job to help single-use technology really deliver better therapeutics. I know as a manager, this is a great opportunity if you have a high performer and they want to get involved with some industry professionals at a senior level. This is a great way for them to learn from them, and the contacts that they make in these meetings usually help your day business very well. So they know who to call at companies, or they call someone on the committee that can then hook them up with the right person at that company. So that's a fringe benefit of working on these efforts other than the day job of getting a better standard to help you get your business done. So it's important for us as an industry really to set the course for this standardization, and we're looking for your help. But we all have to do it together as a community. And that ultimately is where we're going to end up going, and hopefully in a well-organized manner. So thank you very much for your time. This is where some more discussions are going to be. So if you can add this to your calendar, Mike mentioned the BPE meeting in Providence. There's going to be the BPSA International Summit in Washington in July. There will be a USP material biocompatibility meeting in June. And that'll be in Rockville. There'll be a lot of regulators there at that meeting. And then also ASTM is going to have a meeting in October at the FDA facility, which I think also will be a great opportunity to kind of see how the community's getting together. And last but not least, Bioprocess International will be meeting in Boston, and we'll have another one of these town halls in October in Boston, where it's usually a fairly large crowd, and that's where we try to really bring home some of the things that the people want and bring that back to the standards organizations. So again, I thank you for your time, and we're here for questions later. If someone wants to look at these documents here just to get a feel for what's in them, if you haven't seen them, we're here for that. And if you have any question about any of those organizations, please let me know, and I'll be more than glad to hook you up with the people to get you involved. Thank you.